So grafting is a technique that is useful when you're trying to make an invisible seam in your knitting. It's usually one of the last stages you do in a knitting project. So today I'm going to go over the process of how you graft stitches together, and then I'm going to show you how to graft stitches on this sock that I'm working on and just about finished. So basically what you're doing with grafting is sewing with this long tail as opposed to knitting with your needle and your ball of yarn. So if you made it to this stage of your knitting, you know our two basic stitches are knit and purl. So knitting, you go in on the left side of the stitch, purling you go in from the right side of the stitch. And then we can either keep our stitches on the needle or we can take them off the needle after we make our knit and purl stitches. So basically, when we're grafting the stitches, all we're doing is doing all kinds of combinations of knit and purl and on and off. Okay, so I have this little, these cues that I give myself using these 4 words when I'm grafting. So my first step is I put my sewing needle in knitwise, and then I cast it off the needle. So that's my first step. My second step, I then have my purl stitch and I leave it on the needle. So that's my second step. My third step, I have my purl stitch, I insert my needle purlwise and then I cast it off. So that's number 3 in the pink. And then lastly, I do my knit stitch and I leave it on the needle. So that's 4. So that's my yellow. So now my 4 things that I do in order are knit off, purl on, purl off, knit on. So and then you keep repeating these until you go through all the stitches on your needle. So with my sock, which I've misplaced, you'll notice that I have my 2 needles. So the one needle I call the front needle, and the one needle I call my back needle. So the first 2 stitches here there, I use my front needle. And then these bottom 2 here, I use my back needle. So that's the process that we're going to go through when we do these. Okay, so here, these blue colored stitches are my front needle, and these more purpley colored ones are my back needle. So I'm going to try and knit this so you can see both at the same time, if I can. Okay, so my first one is my knit stitch. So I insert my needle knitwise, I bring my yarn through, and then I slip this stitch off. Now for my second stitch on this needle, I'm going to insert my needle purlwise. I'm going to bring the yarn through, and that stitch stays on. So now I've completed my front needle, so now I'm going to go to my back needle. So if I can raise it a little bit like that so you can see it maybe a bit more. I'm going to do purl this time into my first stitch, tighten it. That stitch then comes off like that, and then I'm going to do knit wise, so come in from that way and pull my yarn through, and that stitch stays on. Okay, I'll do it one more time slowly so that you can get the hang of it. So my first one, I insert knitwise, I pull my yarn through, that one comes off, the next stitch there, I insert purlwise, and it stays on. Now I go to my back needle, I insert purlwise, pull that through, that stitch comes off, and then my second stitch I insert it knitwise, and it stays on. Okay, so now I'm going to speed up and do it. The way that I always remember to is that I just finished with a knit stitch and it stayed on, so that means that I'm going to start with a knit stitch. You'll do 2 knit stitches together and then 2 purl stitches together. So once I do it fast, you'll see how much quicker and easier it is to remember. So I knit, off, purl, on, switch my needles, and I purl, off, and then knit on. Okay, so now I've done 2 more. Now I switch back to my front needle, and I knit off, purl on, back needle, purl off, and knit on. Switch again, knit, off, purl, on, purl, oops, now I've lost my yarn, off, knit, on. Now as I get down, these stitches are going to become loose and they're more likely to fall off the needle. So you kind of have to be a little bit more careful when you get to the end. Purl on, purl off, knit on. Okay, so now I'm down to 4 stitches. Knit off, purl on, oops, purl off, last stitch, knit on. Okay, so now I'm down to my last 2 stitches. So now what I do is I do what I've always done, except I don't have my off stitches. So I knit, that one comes off, and I purl, and that one comes off. Then what I usually do is I stick my yarn or my needle through these 2 stitches, start pulling it through, and then pull that little strand up that's in between the 2 of them, and pull my needle through that, and then that forms a nice tight knot. And then I do a couple more knots just to make sure that everything will stay there nice and tight. It's better. And then I take my scissors, I cut off my end, and once I turn my sock right side out, you can see I have a almost seamless end there to my sock. So it looks like it's invisible, you can't even see the seam to it. And that's how we graft stitches.